some examples of the importance of race. So this is an important quote that uh, the traditional concept of race is a biological concept is a myth. Yes. There is no biologically meaningful differences between human beings uh, based on skin color, right? And that one group is superior, one group is inferior is absolute total myth. But it still seems pervasive, right? It still seems to inform a lot of discourse about race. This kind of like white supremacist discourse that kind of circulates, right? Racist discourse. This is an important slide because it shows the 246 years of American slavery, right? Chattel slavery, where people were owned by other people, and then the time period of segregation. So Jim Crow segregation was 86 years, and then here we are. So it ended about 1954. So what is that now? About 70 years or so, right? So we had slaves and Americans had slaves, and we were a segregated society for much, much longer than we've been supposedly a free and open society, right? Which was also questionable, right? But just yeah, I mean, if we're taking into account history and history's effects, we need to look at uh, how long this institution was in place and how long segregation was in place and how these systems, right, are still with us today. We're talking about systems, right? Also, the wealth gap. So your book touches on, yeah, the wealth disparity between uh, different racial groups in our society. And this also gets at the intersectionality of race and class, which is important to understand how race modifies class. So particularly in terms of wealth. So here we have the wealth accumulation and size of the racial wealth gap. So here is white families, median wealth, right? Up here about what 110,000, right? Versus black families and Latino families, and the median wealth with which they are behind, right? And I think that goes back to that history, right? You can't uh, hold people back, not allow them education, force them out of their homes, only allow them to live in certain areas, subject them to um, institutional oppression and overt violence, and not have it have effect in the modern day, right? And even now, right? Like there's that story about in the book about the woman who she's filling out forms to like buy a house or get a loan, and her name is like Allison Williams, and for some reason they just assume that she's white, right? And then so she gets the paperwork and the loan is like approved, and then she's like, oh wait, you have me down as a you have oh yeah, they assume she's white because of how she sounds and how she talks. And she's like, oh, you guys have me down as a white person and I'm a black person. And then suddenly the loan isn't approved, and or they want much more paperwork, and they're not going to loan her as much money once they find out that she's African American. I think it really gets at just the way that race and class are intertwined and how these systems still work today. And then this is return on education. So I think this is so median wealth return. So I think it's college educated folks, um, and I'm not quite sure how to read this, to be honest, but just that the wealth of white folks who become college educated is returned, and we don't see those gains for Black and Latino folks. So just another example of racial disparity that we see.